In this video, I'll be showing you how to solve codes 21 and 22, which are both problems with the VTEC system. In the video, I'm going to be showing you how to take apart and clean the VTEC solenoid assembly. In my case, this wasn't my problem. It ended up being my ECU, which was actually defective, and that's what was causing the code to be thrown and causing me to have sporadic behavior with my idle and with different things. So I'm going to post the troubleshooting guides that I followed after I cleaned, after I went through the trouble of cleaning my VTEC solenoid assembly, and that's what I used to find out that it was the ECU. So if after following the troubleshooting guides you don't indicate any electrical problems and it seems to be a mechanical failure, you can watch the rest of the video and you can try cleaning the VTEC solenoid assembly, and that may solve your problems. Before you take apart your VTEC solenoid assembly, it's a really good idea to have brand new gaskets, because if you try to use your old ones, they're most likely going to leak. So for my car, this is the gasket which goes between the VTEC solenoid assembly and the head, and this is my old gasket, and here's the part number for that one. And you're going to have one of two different types of VTEC solenoids. One of them uses a rubber gasket which doesn't have a filter, and one of them uses a gasket which has a filter that's embedded. Alright, and the way to tell the difference is that the VTEC solenoid, which takes the gasket that doesn't have the filter, has this little metal ring that sits up, and the one that takes the gasket that does have the filter doesn't have that ring. So the gasket which doesn't have the ring is right here, and that's the part number for it. And the rubber gasket that does have the filter, here's the part number for that one. So it's a good idea to use the proper one for your VTEC solenoid. It is possible to use the gasket that doesn't have the filter on the VTEC solenoid that's designed for the gasket with the filter, but I would recommend using the proper gasket that has the filter if you have this specific type, because I feel like having that gasket provides the extra reinforcement that would be there if you had that metal ring, but you don't on this one. Alright, so this is the VTEC solenoid assembly on my car. In order to remove it, I'm first going to have to disconnect these two electrical connections. This one right here with the one wire, this is what activates the VTEC solenoid, and the screen connector here with the two wires, this is the pressure switch. So they both just come off. Okay. Alright, now the next thing is that there's 3 screws, which are the screws that are used to bolt the VTEC solenoid assembly to the head, and those 3 screws are back here. A little hard to see, but there's one down here, there's one right here, and then there's another one back in here. And in my case, since I'm going to be cleaning it rather than replacing the whole thing, I'm also going to be detaching the VTEC solenoid from the rest of the assembly. So before loosening those bolts, those 3 bolts, I also needed to loosen the bolts on the VTEC solenoid itself, these 3 here, because once you get it off, it'll be a lot harder to get them loose. So I've already loosened up all the bolts, so I can go ahead and just remove the whole thing. Another thing I want to mention before you actually remove the VTEC solenoid assembly, it's a good idea to place a shop rag or something absorbent underneath it, because once you remove it, some engine oil will probably come out. So go. Alright, so I have the VTEC solenoid assembly off of the car, and I already took off the solenoid itself. And now to take apart the rest of it, you got this little piece which goes in there. And sometimes what will happen is that this little plunger will get stuck open, and that's what can cause you know, a check engine light, because the pressure sensor will sense that you're getting oil pressure up here when you're not supposed to, when VTEC isn't engaged. So on mine it looks really clean. You know, I always do my oil changes on time, so I really didn't think it would be crudded up, but I thought it would be stuck open, but it's not. So yeah, it just slides out, has the spring in there. Yeah, so I'm gonna just go ahead and spray everything off with some, you know, some typical carburetor cleaner. You could also use brake cleaner, it's the same kind of stuff. Before you do this, I highly recommend that you wear some good rubber gloves and wear eye protection, because if this stuff gets on your skin, it burns, and you don't want it in your eyes. So alright, that should be pretty good for this part. So I'm just going to let this dry, grab another piece. Okay, last thing I'm going to do before reassembling it is I'm going to test the function of the solenoid. Basically, you know, you got the one wire that comes out here, and the wire that connects to this goes to the computer, and basically the computer energizes this with 12 volts to activate VTEC. That's what activates the solenoid, and basically allows the oil to flow through and activate the VTEC. So the body of this is grounded, and then this gets 12 volts applied to it. So sounds like it's working totally fine, and I can see the little plunger in there moving. So it seems to be okay. It seems to be functioning fine. So I can go ahead and reassemble it and put it back on the car and see what happens.